full pin. Here. Howdy, Hog Crankers. My name is Jeff. You're watching TrashWerks, and this is going to be a review on the Ninja 400, which is basically the Miata of sport bikes and bikes in general. It's lightweight, it's cheap, it'll get the job done, and it takes about 7 business days to get up to highway speed. This is actually not my Ninja 400. This is a friend of mine's. I'm borrowing it for this video. It's been razzle-dazzled up with appropriate fairings to make it all cool and gold and shiny. But I do have a Ninja 400 of my own. It is just a track-only Ninja 400. There is no more headlight on mine. There's no license plate. It's not registered or anything like that anymore. It just lives at the track only, so I have to borrow this one. But okay, we have a basically stock 2020 something Ninja 400, which has been beautifully modded out here. We've got stickers for extra power, we've got a slip-on exhaust, a couple of shiny bits, but for the most part, this bike is basically stock. We've got fairings on here, which, as we all know, does add horsepower, but the Ninja 400 here has a parallel twin, 400cc, it's like 390 something, I don't know, and it's basically the same thing you find in the Ninja 500, but it's your basic 180-degree crank, parallel twin. It makes not that much horsepower. I'll actually get the exact number. I can't remember it off the top of my head. And a little bit less torque than that. It's enough to get you around on the street to putt around. Up here at the front, we do have a Nissan caliper. You have a single caliper, single rotor. I don't remember the exact size. It really doesn't matter because the bike doesn't really go that quick, so you don't really need to stop that much. And it's also not that heavy. With the stock package, you do get LED headlights, which is nice. They are good enough. You're really not going to need much out of them. You do get front turn signals that are flush mounted. This one is an aftermarket option, but that does exist. Typically up here at the perch, you usually do get a mirror that does come up off of the front windshield here, but here we have some fancy little CRG mirrors. The front windscreen has also been modified. It does have a zero gravity windscreen on here. Doesn't make too much of a difference. Here at the handles, we have a non-adjustable clutch lever, non-adjustable brake lever. There's really not much going on here. It is cable actuated, both clutch and throttle. There's no drive-by-wire here. This model does come equipped with, I believe this one has ABS. Let me peek down in there. Yeah, I think I see the ABS pump in there. So you can't get ABS, you can get non-ABS. If it's a starter bike, recommend ABS. If this is a track bike, you can take it out or just get one that doesn't have it. This one does have a Leo Vente pipe on there to add a little bit extra bark. But these bikes are pretty quiet to start with. For passenger accommodations, there is a seat, there are pegs, it's not the best ride. It really can't support the weight of 2 people on here, so I don't recommend doing it if you can. But we do also have some tank pads here, if that is something that you wanted to add on. But aside from that, there's really not much going on. They're standard. They'll get you from A to B. From the top, I think something that a lot of people get wrong about the Ninja 400 is that they can outgrow it relatively quickly, and you really can't. Can you learn how to use a clutch and come to a stop and stay upright on a Ninja 400? Yes. Should that be when you change what you're doing and just upgrade to either a 600 or, God forbid, a leader bike? The only real option for upgrading from a Ninja 400 is gonna be the Hayabusa. That's the only option you really should be upgrading to. Anything else is way too much for you. A high booster is the way to go. But as we get into the corporate curves, I'm going to talk about the agility of this bike. And without surprise, it is perfectly agile. This bike can maneuver, it's nimble, it's really light, it's got a small tire on it, so you can expect to be able to get this bike around. You can get your knee down and do everything that you need to if you're doing track riding or more spirited riding. For the street though, it is going to be perfectly able to do whatever you need it to do. I know a lot of people like to just really rip on bikes and go straight in a fast line, or fast in a straight line rather, and that's perfectly fine. This bike is not meant to do that. You will not be going fast on this bike, but you will be able to turn in pretty easily. You will be able to stay pretty planted in a corner. The biggest downside to this bike is going to be the peg limits of it. So the foot pegs actually sit relatively low for a sport bike. All things considered, they're really not that aggressive. Same thing with the forward controls. The bike isn't really a super trek machine from the box. It is meant to be more approachable for a new rider, something that they can learn on. It still has a sporty position. You know, I'm not on a cruiser. I am not out here riding a Rebel 500. I'm not out here riding a R7. It is sort of in between. It's like ergonomically sporty, I guess is the best way you can describe it. So it's good enough for you to get used to sport bike riding position and understand what that's like, but it by no means is going to destroy your wrists. You're not going to have a broken back or broken knees or anything like that from sitting on it for too long. It's not that cramped. You know, it's a pretty nice and chill ride. And through the corporate corners, I have taken this thing a little bit faster. Well, not this one in particular, but I've taken my other bike a little bit faster than I really should have, and the bike was completely fine. Let's wait for traffic here. I have also taken it on track, and the first limit that I did found was the peg. The clip-ons are actually pretty decent, at least for how I ride. They're not that aggressive, and the positioning of them was all right. I know a lot of people do like to drop the clip-ons down a little bit. That makes it a little less comfortable to ride. But overall, I think it's perfectly fine for the street, but I think you can ride around it on the track as well. The only modification that I've done to my track bike to make it a little bit more aggressive is I do have rear set risers that raise the rear set, I think, 1 to 2 inches. I didn't take measurement. I put it where it felt comfortable. I did get more ground clearance from it. I'm not scraping peg at the track anymore, so it's a lot more comfortable of an experience. But on the street, it has enough clearance for you to lean as much as you should be leaning, especially if this is your first bike. You know, if this is a beginner bike for you and you've never ridden before, you really shouldn't be going knee to the ground, street Rossi style. You should be sort of taking it pretty chill. Pops and bangs back there from my bike. My buddy is following me on my 900, so expect to hear that occasionally. I always recommend some kind of parallel twin Japanese bike as a first bike. Usually for most riders, I recommend like a 300 or a 400, maybe even a 500. For heavier riders, I would typically recommend something like a 650. So think like MT-07 Ninja 650, just because it has a little bit extra horsepower and torque for particularly heavy riders. But for everyone else, a 300 or 400 should be fine. When I learned to ride this, I think I was probably like anywhere from 200 to 230 pounds without gear, and I did completely fine on this. Yeah, I stalled it a couple times, but who doesn't if it's their first bike? But I think for everyone on their first bike, this will be just fine, just like a Miata is just fine. Now this will have a little bit of trouble on the highway, especially when it comes to passing on the highway. If you don't drop 10 gears, you're really not going to go anywhere on this thing, but this isn't really meant for that. It will, however, teach you the importance of being able to carry momentum, especially if you ride it on track. You're not going to have that pull that a big bike does. So it will be something where you do have to get used to carrying your momentum into turns, not over slowing. It really does teach that well, and that's why I recommend everyone hang on to their Ninja 400. You know, if you can financially do it when you're upgrading bikes, then keep your Ninja 400. Take it to the track. Keep it as a backup too. And what's nice, if you do have two bikes, and let's say you do crash your Ninja 400, but you still have a second bike, and that's what I recommend. Ooh, a little squirrely there. But this bike is more than capable of doing anything you need to on the street. You really don't have to worry about it. We're about to come up on the highway section here, and you'll really feel how slow it is. I'm going to try and do a pull onto the on-ramp, and I'm going to go as tucked as I can. It's really hard to with this helmet and this camera setup, but I'm going to try and pull as hard as I can on that throttle. I'm going to go full throttle for as much as I can. I'll probably just get out of first and crank it from there. And you're going to see I'm not really going to go anywhere. On other bikes, anything that's sort of mid-size and higher, I can at least get some decent amount of speed, but for this little Ninja 400, it is going to be a struggle. Ew, gross. What is that? Ew. Your Tampa Extra, ew, and what? negative Riz. I do not like the way that the pedals are adjusted on here. I also don't like the way the clutch lever is. It really doesn't engage till pretty far out. I have mine set the other way. Gross. Nasty. As we make this pull, I'll shut up so you can listen to the bike and that fancy Leo Vinci exhaust. But just know we're not going to be going anywhere quick. This bike just does not have it in it. Full pin. As you can see, not anywhere quick. I was full pin for all of like 10 seconds and I'm not getting anywhere. And no, I don't think a tuck is really gonna make that big of a difference on this bike. Again, it's got under 40 horsepower, under I think 30 pound-feet of torque. I'm a honking, stonking man. Big, I think I weighed in at 216 this morning. It's not taking me anywhere quick. And if I want to pass, it's gonna be basically the same story. So let me actually see if I can match up my speed here with this truck, and I will drop down, I'll drop down to 4th, see if I can just speed past it. Here we are next to this truck, going about 70. Full pin and 4th, that's all I get. Really not much going on there. Now we're behind the Mattress of Doom. Actually, we'll try and pass this Mattress of Doom. I do not want that thing flying off and hitting me. I will say though, coming off of riding naked bikes and cruisers, the seating position of the Ninja is just that much more aggressive, where I do feel like being a little bit of a hooligan. But my wrists aren't hurting. The main reason my wrists are giving me any kind of issue right now is just where the levers are adjusted to. Again, this is not my bike. I don't have it adjusted to me, so my natural pull on the brake lever is typically a lot lower than where it is here. You know, if we were to look down here and I was to grab brake levers on one of my bikes, it'd be pretty low, probably under where it is now. With this one, I do have to reach up, and you know, I'm sort of sat like that with my wrist curved up. Not a very fun time. That's the typical bike I ride. That is a Kawasaki Z900, and you can hear it popping and banging there. Cool bike, man, cool bike. But the Ninja 400, I'm very acquainted with it. Again, it is my track bike, so I do spend a lot of time on this platform, just not this particular bike. In terms of wind noise, this windscreen's not going to do much for you. I still get a lot hitting my upper chest all the way up, so I think right above my pecs, right about my collarbone area is where I feel the most wind. And then if I tuck behind the windscreen, if I'm doing full tuck, you know, if I'm at the track, I don't have like a GoPro stuck to my helmet or anything like that. I can full tuck behind the windscreen and it'll sort of graze over the top of my helmet, which is perfectly fine. But here on the street, the windscreen's for show. It provides very minimal wind protection. Let's see if we can make this turn. Yay! The gearbox is nice on this though. You can do a lot of clutch shifting. That's what I typically do. The gear ratios are also pretty predictable in where they're at. You're not really guessing. There's not a lot of skip between. Not a lot of skipping between gears. It's pretty easy to understand where they're at. You're not going to shift from first to second and automatically just be dumped at a really low rev range. It's very predictable, very easy, again, very beginner friendly, but also, again, if you are going to the track, then it will be something that you can use to better predict what you're doing. As we pull onto Yap Avenue here, I will complain about some things on this Ninja, and with that, I actually can't think of anything to complain about. This bike is not pretending to be anything else other than what it is. It is a economical beginner bike. It's not very expensive. I don't know what they're going for nowadays. I guess probably the only thing I can complain about, which really isn't the bike's fault, is actually just going to be the prices that some people try to sell these things for. they'll be midway through a loan and they're trying to sell the bike for basically MSRP, and they still owe a lot of money on the bike, and they have to sell for whatever reason. That's like the worst thing I see about these. Everything else, it's box standard. It's a beginner bike, it's a cheap bike. No one tries to really do anything crazy with them because they just can't. You occasionally see some people who are posting, what's your GPS speed limit? What's the top speed you made it to? This bike, the Speedo, can say 120. I think is the fastest that I've ever had someone go on one of my bikes. I've had a GPS of 106 out at the track, but it's not a speed machine. You don't look at a Miata and be like, oh yeah, how fast does that thing go? No, usually you engine swap it and put twin turbos on it and make a social media account, which you can't really do that with this bike. I'm sure someone has or will, but that's not what this is for. This is for either learning the basics, mastering the basics, tracking, or in this case, being a nice little chill city cruiser, because it is perfectly fine for city riding. You're gonna get around just fine. You have enough power to scoot around. Would a 650 be nicer? Yes, but this is cheap. I mean, these bikes are cheap. I'll look up the price. I'll put it on screen right now. I'll put some flashing graphics around it that I don't know how to edit yet, and future me is going to hate me for saying this, and I'm not going to cut it out. I'm going to keep it in, and I'm going to put those graphics around so that you can see exactly how much this thing costs. It's one of the cheapest first bikes you can get. It comes with ABS. The new models, the Ninja 500s, come with a TFT dash. And you get really fancy, equipment there. You got bells and whistles. Comes with a TFT dash, you get ABS, LED headlights. That's basically all you can ask for a beginner bike. Back in my day, a beginner bike had a Speedo, a carburetor, and you better hope you know how to do emergency braking, otherwise you're either going over the bars or you're going on the ground. The ABS on this is actually pretty good. I used to street ride my Ninja 400 before I upgraded to my 900. And commuting was perfectly fine. It has enough power to do everything that I needed it to do. You're not, again, doing anything crazy. You can come off a light just fine. The worst part is, again, just that passing power. But everything else is fine. You get about as much wind protection as you'd expect out of this windscreen. You get a lot of wind protection on your body, honestly. The only place I really feel it is my collarbone and above. But everything else, my legs feel pretty fine. I don't really get much debris on my legs, but I do also wear some gear down there that helps buffet a lot of that out. So, I mean, it's a perfectly fine bike. And now as we're on this section, which I like to basically call our sort of country road, which I like to think of like 45 to 60 mile an hour, or one lane rather, going straight, what's it like? This bike is completely fine. Could I go for a handlebar riser to make it a little bit more comfortable so I'm not having to lean forward or anything like that? Yeah. Could I also just learn to grip the tank better and hold my back up and, learn how to stabilize my core, which is actually something that's better to learn over the long run? Yeah. But, if that's really a big concern to you, get a Z400 or a Z500. I think they make a 500 of the Z now. Get one of those. Those will be completely fine. It's the same platform. You just get a different handlebar. And, you'll be able to have the same platform. And this platform is rock solid. People will absolutely abuse these, and they'll still be completely fine. You can abuse them. I've maybe not taken as much care of mine as I should have, and it'll live just fine. That 0 to 50 pretty quickly. I don't know exactly how quickly. I know that other bikes can do it better, but for just a little spirited come off the throttle there, it's more than enough. You're still a little bit quicker than traffic, so you're good there. I wouldn't recommend a smaller bike like a Ninja 250 or a Rebel 250, at least not for this environment, not if you're doing long country roads or highway riding or anything like that. I think those bikes just don't have the power to handle that without struggling. Whereas something like the Ninja 400 or the new Platform 500s, you're good. You're more than fine with this. And I say that as we are about to pull on to what I like to call commuter hell, which we likely will get stuck into traffic. I'm on traffic. I'm on traffic. Surely you'll go. A little bit. Nope. A little bit of a hesitation there out of the BMW. You see that quick shifter I have on my Ninja 400? A lot of people do put quick shifters on these, especially if it's a track bike. I just do clutchless, it's perfectly fine. But why do I call this commuter hell or Stroad hell? Well, it's that red light up there. We're gonna catch up to traffic, and by the next light, we'll catch up to more traffic, and the light after that, even more, even more, even more, until eventually we remember that it sort of sucks to live in a place where everything is so spread out. I do hear my bike, popping and banging back behind me. I wonder if the mic's gonna be able to catch that. Yeah, you can learn so much on these bikes. And a lot of people say, well, I've outgrown my Ninja 400. You haven't. Yeah, we're content creators. Oh, we're content creators. We've got little GoPros on our helmets. We're content creators. Oh, yeah. We make content for the internet. Oh, it's so hot. It was very cold last week, and now it's hot. It's like 70 degrees. Oh, my glasses are fogging. The bike itself, in terms of stopping and going, completely fine. The brakes will stop you. I mean, as long as you're not absolutely railing them, you can keep up with traffic just fine. Again, the gearing is completely fine for this. This bike is not a very hot bike. It's just 2 little cylinders, 200 cc's each, not making a whole lot of heat there. So really, it's pretty comfortable. The seat height is very approachable. It is taller than, you know, something like a Rebel 500 or let's say like a Kawasaki Eliminator, that sort of weird class of sort of cruisers that they have going on. But it's not anything crazy. I have pretty short legs. I have like a 30-inch inseam. My riding boots help a little bit, but I'm not tiptoeing on this thing. I can very confidently flat-foot it, especially because the rear suspension on this isn't that robust. You know, these are little beginner bikes made by a Japanese company for primarily Japanese people. They're little light ones over there. Whereas if you're a honking, stonking American like me, you can squat this thing down pretty well and be able to flat foot easily. On my Z900, I can't flat foot that. I can do 1 foot down flat. I can't do 2. If I'm backing out of places on the bike, then I am doing that on my little tappies. Whereas the Ninja 400, I can walk this thing around as much as I need to and be completely fine with it. In terms of mirrors, though, for commuting, though, you know, being able to see what's going on behind you, this bike has the CRG Aero mirrors. It makes it a little bit harder. The stock mirrors that sit up in front of the windscreen are actually really good. I liked them on my bike. I actually didn't remove my mirrors from my bike because I liked how good they worked. They could see well over your shoulders. They didn't vibrate a lot. They had a decent magnification to them, so you could actually see really well what was going on around you. You can see really well what was going on behind you and keep a good eye on that. Again, these ones make it a little harder. They just sit lower and have a smaller field of view, but for commuting around the city and traffic like this, you're fine. One of the bigger issues is really just visibility. This is a pretty small bike, all things considered, to other bikes. It's small, it's not that loud. So yeah, there have been times where people have started to just come over into my lane, not knowing that I was there. And, you know, a lot of that, I don't want to say was from lane positioning, but I do think there is a harder chance of a driver being able to see you on this as opposed to something that is, let's say, a little bit more bigger or louder. But overall, it's completely fine. You'll be able to do everything you need to on here. You can commute around. Coming to and off stops, this thing is completely good at. The brakes on it are more than capable. The gearing is pretty forgiving. The clutch is pretty forgiving. So you can upshift and downshift easily. You can learn how to rev match. You can learn how to slip shift. You know, all of that is pretty good. The front brakes don't have too aggressive of a bite, so if you accidentally stab them or anything like that, you're not going to go down. The suspension is also relatively soft too, so you got a lot of leeway there. So much so that I have actually panic stabbed my front brakes at the track. I was mid-corner and some guy just dives right in front of me, and I started hitting these things, and I was at full lean. Knee was on the ground scraping. I started squeezing. I was already unloaded because my corner exit was there, but dude just hopped in front, and I was fine. Bike, front suspension absorbed it. We kept riding on, and that was the end of that. So it's a relatively soft bike. If you want to take it to the track and get really serious about it, you can start upgrading things. I took mine stock. In fact, I'll show you pictures of what it looks like with it stock. The fork oil in my track bike has 30,000 miles on it. It's very soft. It's not very good. The brakes sort of suck, but it works well enough. So coming off a stop, as you can see, perfectly fine. Easy, handled it. I wasn't absolutely giving it beans. A little bit more than I would on one of my bigger bikes, but I can still travel just fine. But I'd say the overall consensus and my overall thoughts on the Ninja 400, it is the embodiment of keep it simple, stupid. Why overcomplicate things when you don't need to? The frame is adjusted well enough for just about everyone. The suspension is adjusted well enough for just about everyone. The power is good enough for just about everyone. The main changes they made to the Ninja 500 were primarily just for emissions compliance. The actual motor itself isn't that different. Same thing with the rest of the platform. It's basically the same, if I'm not mistaken. I think the frame and everything is the same. They just updated the dash because, people like to have nicer dashes. But aside from that, everything's the same. The wheels, tires, exhaust. I think maybe they tweaked the exhaust a bit because, again, emissions. But everything else, completely fine. Not much to say. It works for just about everyone. Why change it? And if you need to upgrade things, it's relatively cheap. If you get something that is Ninja 400 specific, they're all pretty cheap. You can make modifications to this bike on a budget. If you get some of the more universal parts, I'm thinking like, suspension cartridges, springs, stuff like that. It's going to be a little bit more expensive if you go high end, but everything else, if I need to replace these levers, it's cheap. If I need to replace a clutch switch, it's cheap. If I need to replace any OE part on here, except for maybe fairings, it's really not that expensive. But, once you look at performance aftermarket, universal parts, that's where the price comes in, but it's like that for everyone. The Ninja 400 is no different. It's a Miata. That's the best way I can describe it. It's not fast. It's not, high performance, but it's balanced. It's something that you can show up someone on a big bike at the track, and I do it all the time. It's very fun to do. But at the same time, there will be a growth limit. There will be a point where you have outgrown the bike, and that's just natural. But I will say, most people misjudge that, myself included. I upgraded to the 900 way sooner than I should have off the 400. I like to use the excuse that my girlfriend wanted to get into riding, and so I was going to give the 400 to her, and that's why we made that switch so soon. And it was fine. I still learned how to ride on the 900. I still mastered everything that I could while she was riding. But could I have gone a longer time? Yeah, for sure. Did I need to? Not really, but it's whatever. This bike is perfectly fine. Howdy, brother. So, that's pretty succinct. There's really not much to say about a Ninja 400. Just, if you're on the fence, don't be. It'll do what you need it to. It's cheap. Everything around it is cheap. You're not really going to get anything of benefit from this bike over another bike and vice versa. Just get it. If you're looking to just start riding, go down to the dealer, buy it, finance it if you can. Just for credit, because odds are if you're buying a 400, you're someone who's relatively young, but if you're a little bit older, just buy it outright. This thing it's cheap. That's about it. That's all I can really say about the 400, which, there's really not much to begin with. So with that, if you do have any questions, let me know. If you enjoyed the video, thought it was educational, drop a like, subscribe, send me money, write posters about me. I don't know. Do whatever you want to do, but I will see you in the next one.